In the winter of 1933, as the Great Depression choked the life out of American enterprise, a bankrupt heating salesman named Charles Darrow presented a board game to the executives of the Parker Brothers Company in Salem, Massachusetts. It was a game about buying, selling, and renting properties on a board named for the streets of Atlantic City. It was a game of cutthroat capitalism, where one player accumulated all the wealth and the others spiraled into crushing debt. The executives scoffed. A board game about bankruptcy? During the worst economic collapse in American history? They emphatically rejected it, citing 52 fundamental design errors. Darrow was rejected, but he was not deterred. He produced the game himself, packaged it in a simple white box, and sold it door to door. Within a year, it was the biggest craze in America. Parker Brothers, realizing their catastrophic error, bought the rights for a fortune. The game became Monopoly, the most famous, best-selling, and globally recognized game in history, officially saving the Parker Brothers Company and forever enshrining Charles Darrow as its lone, ingenious inventor, a rags-to-riches American hero. This is the official story. It is a lie. The astonishing, outrageous, and meticulously factual truth is that Charles Darrow did not invent monopoly. He merely repackaged a concept that had been in circulation for over 30 years. The true inventor was an uncompromising, radical feminist, writer, and proponent of the economic theories of Henry George named Elizabeth Lizzie Magie. She did not invent the game to celebrate monopolies, but to warn the world against them. Her invention, the Landlord's game, was a brilliant, subversive piece of political education designed to teach Americans why unchecked greed was a moral catastrophe. When Darrow stole it, stripped it of its moral core, and monetized its darkest elements, he not only became a millionaire, but effectively erased a powerful woman from history. This is the untold war for the soul of the most capitalistic game in the world. It is the story of Lizzie Magie, a radical woman battling the titans of American industry, and the secret history of monopoly that Parker Brothers fought for decades to conceal. Brentsville, Virginia, 1903. Elizabeth Magie was not the type of woman to conform to the gilded expectations of the early 20th century. She was 53 years old, lived alone in a small apartment, and financially supported herself as a stenographer, an office job that afforded her independence but little wealth. Her real passion, however, was not commerce, but social justice. Lizzie was an ardent Georgist, a follower of the economist and social theorist Henry George. George's central compelling idea was simple. Land and natural resources, the gifts of nature, belong equally to all people. He argued that since the value of land was created by the community, by building infrastructure, roads, and cities, the profits generated by rising land value should be taxed away and returned to the public. This concept was known as the single tax. To Lizzie, the problem with America was not individual laziness, but the very rules of the game, the system that allowed private individuals to accumulate vast fortunes simply by owning unworked land, leading to poverty, slum tenancy, and grotesque economic inequality. Lizzie was an evangelist for George's ideas, but she faced a constant challenge. Economic theory was boring. It was complex, academic, and could not easily reach the working-class people who suffered most from monopolies. She needed a Trojan horse. She needed a medium that was engaging, fun, and capable of demonstrating a difficult concept faster than any pamphlet or lecture. She found it in cardboard and wooden tokens. The Landlord's game. In 1903, Lizzie Magie received U.S. Patent number 748626 for her invention, the Landlord's game. It was a brilliant innovation, a game with a path of squares around a board played with dice, tokens, and property cards. But unlike any game before it, Magie's game had two distinct sets of rules, intentionally housed in a single box. One, the Monopolist Rules, the current system. The object was to purchase as much land as possible, raise the rents, crush the opponents into poverty, and ultimately become the sole winner by driving everyone else into debt. It was a vicious, cutthroat exercise in economic supremacy. 2. The anti-monopolist rules, the anti-single tax system. Here, the object was to generate wealth, not hoard it. When all players paid rent into a communal pot, the land tax was used to help everyone. The winner was the player who created the most shared prosperity. Lizzie's profound design was that the players had to choose which America they wanted to live in. In playing the game under the monopolist rules, the players themselves experienced the inevitable, miserable spiral of poverty and failure, making them viscerally aware of the systemic flaws of capitalism. The game was not entertainment. It was a devastating piece of social commentary, making the players winners even as they lost. Lizzie understood the psychological power of the game. People loved the monopolist rules, often preferring the ruthlessness and the satisfying singular victory. But that enjoyment was always tinged with guilt and a clear understanding of the injustice. Lizzie's genius was that she had created a teaching tool that, through the sheer joy of competition, forced its players to confront the true cost of greed. The underground movement. Magie didn't sell her game to a major company. She viewed it as a public educational tool. She produced a few hundred copies herself and, critically, encouraged players to copy the board for personal use. This decision allowed the Landlord's game to spread like a linguistic virus across America's most progressive and intellectual circles. It circulated among university students, professors, and Quaker communities who had a deep interest in social reform. The game mutated and evolved as it traveled. To Arden, Delaware, a community founded on Georgist principles, players added customized local names to the squares. At the University of Pennsylvania, students and professors refined the rules, sharpening the competitive edges. By the 1920s, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, a group of Quakers, recognizing the local landmarks, created the now famous board, with names like Boardwalk and Park Place. They added the concept of developing property with small standardized wooden houses and hotels. The game that Charles Darrow would later claim to invent was already a nationally famous, hand-copied, and intensely competitive underground phenomenon, a grassroots product of 2 decades of American intellectual debate, all sparked by Lizzie Magie's original vision. Germantown, Philadelphia, 1932. Charles Darrow was, by most accounts, a man desperate for a break. He was 53, jobless, and deeply affected by the despair of the Depression. He was not a tinkerer, an inventor, or a game designer. He was a salesman, and a good salesman knows a product when he sees one. Darrow had friends in Atlantic City, and it was through this social circle that he was introduced to the underground version of the Landlord's game. He played it and was instantly captivated by its pure, exhilarating cruelty under the monopolist rules. His version of the game was a faithful, near-perfect reproduction of the Atlantic City Quaker version. The street names, the concept of building houses and hotels, the corner squares, go, jail, free parking, and go to jail. Crucially, Darrow kept only one set of the rules: the ruthless monopolist path to singular victory. He jettisoned Lizzie Magie's entire moral and educational framework. Darrow took the hand-drawn board and tokens, and with the help of a commercial artist, professionally rendered them. He called his version Monopoly. When Parker Brothers first rejected his game in 1933, they did so not because it was inherently bad, but because they had a policy against selling games where the object was to bankrupt others, and, more practically, because the game was already so widely known that they believed it was in the public domain. The executives told Darrow it takes entirely too long to play, and the theme is against the fundamental Parker Brothers concept of bringing happiness to people. Darrow ignored them. He partnered with a local printer and engraver and began selling Monopoly out of his home in Germantown, Pennsylvania. The game exploded, driven by word of mouth. Americans, tired of the Depression's grinding misery, found a strange, cathartic release in practicing the financial ruthlessness they had once idolized.